Right, let's talk about Rimworld. Right now, obviously, you know that I have a lot of love for this game. I had this game in very early beta, very early access. But anyway, so I got a lot of love for Rimworld. It's a game, I had it since very, very early access, way before it was on Steam. And I played through various versions, even when it sort of first came out, and it was very Spartan and very barren, and you couldn't really see where they were going to go with it. You know, you could still see the very core of the game was going to be something that had a lot of potential, and you know, a lot of you know, just it was a very interesting game. I mean, like, one of the things that I think is kind of like the holy grail of game design right now is a functional and easy to use Dwarf Fortress type game. I mean, a lot of people are trying to create that. Dwarf Fortress is incredibly deep, but it's so grotesque to look at and so difficult to use in terms of the UI. Even when you take all the tile sets and stuff, it's still just not going to ever have a big, you know, contemporary audience. Even though I can admire what the game does and what it achieves, it's not anything I've ever spent any time playing. I just can't. I get as far as like generating a world. I start playing a little bit and I go, this is fucking mental. I just can't do this. So you just piece the fuck out, you know. But anyway, the Rimworld had that potential to basically take the potential of Dwarf Fortress and keep expanding and building on it in kind of a modern space setting, very Firefly-esque. So it was like a game that immediately appealed to me, and I played through so many iterations of it, and it was clear it was getting better with every update. And it was early access done right. You know, if you were signed up to Ladeon Studios website, you know, you got fucking constant updates about what they were doing with it, constant developer feedback about their plans. It was done with a really, really small team. The client got emailed to your email address, and it would be like, download it, saves won't be compatible, sorry about that. You know, it was like, it was early access done right. And I see so many piece of shit early access games, and even AAA publishers now basically putting out games that are early access games and not saying they're early access games. And they just patch and patch and patch until, you know, a year, 2 years down the line, the game is semi-functional, but by then you've moved on, you know, and they've got your money, so they don't give a fuck. So there's a million reasons to praise Rimworld. First of all, it's a great game. That's first and foremost, right? But second of all, they took a concept that has been abused and exploited in the form of early access and treated everybody who backed them incredibly well. And as one of those people that was involved, like, right from the fucking start and followed the game right out of early access, I think I've had, like, just untold value for money, which was unbelievably limited. I mean, like, you're talking like it's like a $20, $25 game. You know, it's insane the amount of value you get out of it. And everybody I know, I don't know anybody who has anything bad to say about Rimworld. Like, if you played Rimworld, you generally like the game. I mean, I've never talked to anybody who's played it, who's had anything bad to say about it. I've never talked to anybody who I've recommended it to who goes, yeah, it ain't my cup of tea. Like, generally people play it, get into it, and it's a kind of game you can lose yourself in for hours, and, you know, then generally people, you know, will wait for the next update and what's new, and then they'll go back in, start a new colony, and fuck around with it. It's just a great game. So, oh shit, I didn't change the title. God, I'm such a bad streamer, guys. I'm such a bad streamer. Let's definitely get that changed before people talk. The worst part is this is actually going out live on HLTV now, so... Oh, God. Okay. Right, there we go. It should be updated. Will I be hosting the Rocket League thing? Yeah, sure. I definitely will be. That should have done it. If you refresh now, it should be good. Let me just check though. Yeah. Okay, good. Right. So anyway, so you might ask yourself, why why is it that with just universal praise from everybody who's ever played the game, being recommended by people like myself, and other people, why is it that Rimworld hasn't had better press? And we're going to get into that today on the show because it's reared its head again, the exact reasons why. Now, the first thing I want to direct you to is let's just go to Rimworld on Metacritic. Now, again, I really hate Metacritic in a lot of ways, but it's done a couple of things inadvertently. First, I guess I'll qualify what I mean when I say I hate Metacritic. Metacritic has become, and critic aggregation sites have become so important to the industry, both in terms of television, movies, that side of the entertainment industry, but especially video games, that it's very often you'll hear about companies building in performance bonuses based on how your Metacritic rating is, and not the users, not the players, the critics. Well, that's insanity. I mean, quite famously, back when Fallout New Vegas came out, that was a huge cause of consternation. Bethesda used low Metacritic scores out of a game that's now considered a classic by everybody, and probably the best Fallout since it went in three-dimensional Fallout instead of top-down. Bethesda used that low Metacritic score as an excuse not to pay out Obsidian a bunch of money when they put out a brand new game, the best Fallout game since Fallout 3, in an 18-month crunch period, and they got fucked over it. So that to me is absurd, especially now in this day and age where critics don't even fucking play games. I mean, like, we're at that stage now where there was an argument brewing the other day on the internet where somebody said, somebody had wrote an article saying, if you do not play games, but you like watching videos and streams, you're not a gamer, you're just a fan of gamers and gaming culture and games. And people went crazy. So, well, this is gatekeeping bullshit. Imagine a world where you literally, it's considered a controversial statement.
Happy birthday, Big Chungus.
Thanks,
Here's a $5 for a pint on me.
Thank you.
Love
very
you,
much.
dude.
Appreciate it. So imagine a world where we live in now, where it's like, it's a controversial statement to say if you don't play games, you're not a gamer. I mean, that's where we're at right now, and it's kind of that ties into a much broader problem with gaming, that it's been deemed a cool thing, so people want to get into it, and then as soon as they're in it, they're like, oh, and look at all these bad things and how oppressive it is, and let's change everything, And this is why, as I said on the previous stream, you never see anybody arguing about, like, librarians are overwhelmingly female. Let's get more men into being librarians. You never hear shit like that, do you? Because it's not cool. Like, nobody wants to be involved in being a fucking librarian. The Dewey Decimal System isn't exciting, So anyway, I don't like Metacritic for that reason. I think it empowers critics who cannot be trusted, and generally it ignores overwhelming positive viewer feedback. I'm gonna do on my side channel called NetDicks. I am gonna record a video very soon talking about the Orville, because I finally got round to watching the Orville. Right, like, I hate Seth MacFarlane. Talked about that on a previous stream. I won't rehash that. I hate him. I think he's a hack. I don't think he's particularly funny. And I powered through a very poor pilot to find an incredible TV show. I mean, way better than that new fucking Star Trek Discovery that came out. And it's like both Star Trek and Star Wars have been fucked by the woke brigade. The Orville is so good. There are so many episodes that are genuinely moving, great characters. And yeah, you've got to, like, seriously, if you're a fan of the original, like, especially Next Generation, like, as a love letter to Star Trek The Next Generation, it's incredible. Yet if you go on Metacritic, you will see where these critics who want Star Trek Discovery to succeed because of its woke nonsense, even though it's not a true Star Trek show in any traditional sense, you'll see they've given the Orville super low ratings, saying, oh, well, it's not woke enough, even though it has an incredibly diverse cast. It touches on some incredibly, like, sensitive issues, like, for example, one of the alien races very early on in the series, they're all male, right? They're all male, and they give birth The men give birth; they have eggs, and they give birth to a female, and it's tradition on their planet that women being female is considered a disability, so they want to give this baby a sex change so it can have the best start in life, and everyone else on the crew who isn't one of these aliens is super like, that's disgusting, that's, you know, but it is our culture, you know. They're like the Klingon types in the Orville, and it's a great episode, and it's like really, and it doesn't have a cheesy ending, it's got like a double twist, you know, so really good. But I saw Vox had written an article about that saying, oh, the Orville, it's terrible, look what it's doing, compounding transphobia, and it's like, it's definitely not doing that. It's the opposite, actually, if anything. So really good writing. I suspect Seth MacFarlane doesn't actually do that much writing. Like, about every 8 minutes, there'll be like a dick joke or a gross out joke. So that limits it to about 4 of those an episode with its runtime. And you go, oh, that's Seth MacFarlane. But then the rest of it's great. And it's like, you know what? I can tolerate Seth MacFarlane for that. But anyway, so the critics have given the Orville, like, it's something insane. I was to bring it up, it's like 3.2, you know, 36% average critic review score. User review score, 80%, you know, 8 out of 10, higher, because it's a really good fucking TV show. Like, objectively, it's a good TV show. But it's been attacked, and it just shows how useless critics are. So we start applying this to video games and not just rambling on about the Orville and TV shows. This is what you've got here with Rimworld, right? So look at this. The user score is 8.9, based on 141 users who bothered to submit reviews. There's only 10 reviews that would be considered negative, and you'll just see lots of straight 10s because it's an incredible game. But then you're like, okay, well, what's going on with the critic reviews, right? And the critic reviews, you'll be like, oh, Richard, you fucked up. It's a Metascore of 86. So you're wrong. Critics haven't been giving it a bad review. But let's dig a little deeper, shall we? And let's have a look who these critics are. Hooked Gamers gave it a perfect 100. Never heard of that publication. Strategy Gamer, perfect 100. Have heard of that publication, but it's still a small publication. GRYonline.pl, a Polish publication, gave it 95. IGN Japan gave it 90. GameStar gave it 85. Game Grin gave it 75. And then the only two sort of large recognizable publications in the Metacritic is PC Gamer, who only reviewed it last week. We'll get to that debacle in a second, who gave it an unbelievable 74, very low within the context of its average scores from users and other publications. And when you hear the grounds for that, it's gonna be mind-blowing. And then Rock Paper Shotgun, who, because they don't use scores, they had this positive little bit at the bottom saying it can be a bit confounding at first, not to mention the ugliness of those grey boxes, but it doesn't take long to realize that this is something special. So ostensibly it's a good review, but because it has no score, it doesn't contribute to its Metascore. And they're the only two big publications. You know, Polygon have never reviewed it. The main IGN never reviewed it. Kotaku never reviewed it. Why are there no game reviews of this incredible game? This game that is an exemplary, early access game. Very strange, isn't it? Well, it's not strange, because I've been around the block quite a while, and some of you, I'm sure, I don't want to shock you guys, all right? So I'm just going to give you a moment to settle yourself. I'm about to say a really nasty word that I'm sure will become against the Twitch terms of service very soon, and probably will have my channel banned. So I just want you to brace yourselves. But I always keep it 100. That's who I am. I keep it 100. Okay, so just Don't freak out. Right. The guy who made this, Tynan Sylvester, he did an interview back in 2016 for a publication I used to work for called Breitbart. Now, listen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I know that even though Andrew Breitbart, was a Jewish guy who lived in Hollywood, who wanted to create a new era of sort of civilian journalism and pushing back against, mainstream media. And yes, got a bunch, like the Acorn scandal, did get some stuff wrong. And even though they have offices in Israel, I'm told Breitbart is an anti-Semitic publication. I'm told it's a racist publication. I get that hammered into my brain all the time. And I've said this. I've seen examples of things that I'm just like, yeah, okay, that's not really acceptable, and it's pandering to a very low and ugly common denominator, and I do not support that. But equally, as I said in the text section, we just wanted to write about video games, and we did some good work. Now, Tynan Sylvester did an interview with Breitbart. And it was a pretty good interview. Here it is. This is the interview. I know, avert divergent eyes. Oh no, the orange bee. Soon to be the new hate symbol along with Pepe, right? I know, sorry. So anyway, you can see here, he did this interview, pretty interesting. He said games are just systems, was the quote from Rimworld developer Tynan Sylvester, on the measure of a game by the emotion it creates. And what he talked about here, on the 3rd of October 2016, please remember that date. 3rd of October 2016. Very important to the story that I'm going to show you. Indie developer Tynan Sylvester and I sat down for a lengthy conversation on game design theory, innovation in the industry, and his own project Rimworld. And this was by Nate Churchy, a guy that I actually worked with directly, a guy I've met. We all went out on a very strange dinner date one night, organized by Milo. We went to a place called Le Dans Noir. And it's this restaurant in London where you eat in total pitch. It's completely pitch black, and all the waiters are blind, and they serve you a meal. And we were just at a table, all of the Breitbart tech section, just eating in total darkness, like listening to Milo make jokes about how, someone's just stuck a dick, whatever. So I've actually met Nate, right? Anyway, so you will find nothing political in this interview, by the way. You can see, look, talks about how he used to work for Irrational, talks about, sunk cost fallacy in games, talks about how to design games, and that Nate had read the book that he recommended, and then he said, Tynan makes a joke about making a big dick in Minecraft. Nate says, I wouldn't know, I've not really played it. And it's just like a very benign interview talking about design. I mean, that's literally all it talks about, just game design philosophies. Now, the reason Tynan did this interview with Breitbart is because he seems to be a pretty apolitical guy. He doesn't judge the publication based on what people say about it, or even the people who read it. He just looks at their sort of, publication history. He looked at the text section. He felt it would be a good place to do an interview. How naive Tynan Sylvester was, because he thought this would have no repercussions. Doing an interview with Breitbart, he thought it would have no repercussions for his career. But of course it did. First of all, this occurred. Hang on, let me just make sure I've got the right tweet here. Here we go. So he tweeted out this interview on Breitbart that he did. Sorry, I keep saying that word. I promise I'll stop. I'm sure it's very triggering for everybody. And he tweeted it out, and you're going to see a name that I'm sure you're familiar with. And it's Daniel Z. Klein, former hero of Riot Games, the guy who got fired for the way he behaved during that scandal where Riot Games had basically banned guys from attending certain seminars at PAX. And he basically said a lot of inflammatory things about their consumer base. Not the first time, as you're going to see. And Riot Games decided to fire him. And, of course, all the woke warriors said he was a fucking hero for it. But he's not. He's just an obnoxious piece of shit who just inarguably lies. He's been serially manipulated by his partner, who is also a habitual pathological liar. And there's a body of evidence that supports that. And, so he was straight in there. And this is when he worked for Riot, by the way. And he said, Are you at all concerned that this is on Breitbart? And Tyler Sylvester goes, no. And then Daniel Z. Klein says, Breitbart often gives abusive people a voice. They've recently attacked my partner for being a trans man in game dev, to which someone replies, can you provide an example of this attacking? And as always, Daniel Z. Klein hits block and then retreats back to his fantasy world and never provides any evidence. Just the narrative will do. Thank you very much. This tweet here, no. And this tweet here, tweeting out a link to Breitbart, has absolutely fucked Tynan Sylvester. Absolutely fucked Tynan Sylvester. He doesn't realise it back here in October 2016. But just let's have a little talk about this tweet down here, where Daniel Z. Klein said, Breitbart often gives abusive people a voice, and they've recently attacked my partner. And I was like, oh, wait. He's talking about me, isn't he? Because obviously he's talking about me. Now, what you probably might want to also look at is this tweet here by Daniel Z. Klein, just so you get an idea of his mindset, right? This is back in March. And he said, I'm not going to jump into the current shitstorm too much because dealing with Fallout is tedious, but I'll say this much. One, Breitbart is the brainless mouthpiece for Gamergate, and if you write for them, you certainly don't know much about ethics or journalism. You're not even a real journalism. That's right. You're not even you see what I mean? You see where that's my fucking sub thing now? 2, shit for brains, that's me, is permabanned from the League subreddit. There should be an achievement for that. Yeah, here's the achievement. I didn't bend the knee to a bunch of fucking glorified janitors on Reddit who wanted to police what I tweeted. And yes, you know, it probably stifled the growth of my YouTube channel a little bit. And probably did jeopardize jobs back when I was a writer. But you know what? I kept my fucking pride intact, didn't humor those fucking sad, pathetic wastrels, and I got to be on national television for 2 years while they're still working menial jobs, flipping fucking burgers and staying in their parents' basements and everything else that they do, all behind their anonymous names. Who wins? Oh, it's Richard Lewis wins. So yeah, here's the achievement that you get for it. It's called success and being able to look at yourself in the mirror. You'd know nothing about that, my friend. And then 3, the monsters I previously called out have organized a week-long targeted harassment campaign to convince me they're not monsters. This is all I will say. Now to the block button. My hero. My hero. So let's have a look at that attack, shall we? Now again, trigger warning. It's a Breitbart link, and it's written by... obviously, alt-right leader Richard Lewis. Alt-right leader Richard Lewis of Breitbart. No relation, of course. And this is the report I did. This is the attack. I call it reporting. Daniel Z. Klein calls it attacking for whatever reason. Senior Riot Games staff member goes on anti-Gamergate Twitter rampage. Sounds like Daniel Z. Klein, doesn't it? It's like, to him, Gamergate, like I said to a lot of these losers, Gamergate was the most culturally significant thing. It's their Vietnam. It's their Vietnam, and they're all rocked with PTSD just because a bunch of gamers said, wait, don't you all know each other? And aren't you all fucking each other? And aren't you all, like, writing good coverage, like, in exchange for fucking? And isn't this all a bit too close and a bit too weird? And shouldn't that not be happening? And isn't that... And harassment? And there you go. You know, that was their equivalent of Vietnam. It's unbelievable. So look, a senior Riot Games staff member went on a bizarre and provoked Twitter rant about Gamergate, declaring anyone who identifies with the consumer-driven movement to be a monster. The League of Legends champion designer Daniel Z. Klein then spent a good portion of his evening meditating on his privilege, prompting some people to voice concerns about his well-being. The outburst echoes that of another Riot staff member, Bex Hernandez-Gerber, who has made a string of anti-Gamergate Twitter posts, as well as aggressively spouting the usual social justice warrior rhetoric. I add, this was March 2016, so, you know, I think it's okay back then to unironically use social justice warrior. Now I just call them woke. We're past it. You try to reclaim it, have it, fine. You're woke. I think that carries a similar negative connotation. It's all good. Anyway, you can see here that in October last year, he was a vocal proponent of banning the Gamergate panel at South by Southwest, stating, safe to say, no women, people of color, or trans people in tech is safe. unless they support GG. I don't know where he pulled that from. So this was another mad fantasy of his. And then he said that if you're going to use what's happening to me now as proof that GG is active. Oh, yeah, that was back when he said Gamergate weren't active. Because he started out not supporting Gamergate, but saying it wasn't as bad. And then, of course, like all of his fucking little enclave told him that he shouldn't say that. So then he tweeted out, GGers, that's Gamergaters, are criminals. I wish them nothing but pain and misery, he said, and then followed it up with, there isn't a single Gamergater I wouldn't laugh at if they were on fire. No regrets. So again, remember, if you've ever used the hashtag on Twitter, Daniel Z. Klein would laugh at you if you were burning to death. That's what he says. And he was allowed to work for Riot Games after this. Keep in mind that loser Sanjuro, all he said was, Tyler 1 uses steroids and will probably die of cancer, right? Like, I mean, you know, this guy said if you've ever used a hashtag on Twitter that said Gamergate, he would laugh at you while you burn to death. I kind of consider those statements like at least equal weighting, but of course, Sanjuro just wasn't woke enough. He was woke, but he wasn't woke enough. That's the problem. He didn't have enough complaints with HR racked up about how he was unfairly treated. And then also as well, if I remember rightly, let me just see, because there was something else about, Bex Gerber in here. There was something else. Oh, yeah. And that was it. Like, now keep in mind, there's nothing attacking either of them here. But then on the day he went crazy, there was like a Reddit thread put up, and it was by somebody who said they knew Daniel Z. Klein. And this was the Reddit comment in there saying, Daniel is pretty miserable ever since he met Bex. Every issue Bex has, he gets sucked into. It's an abusive relationship. Domestic violence is very real, Daniel, and you are being abused. When you read this thread and you easily dismiss all the anti-Riot comments, which you will, since certain plebs are making about cancer, grow up, Triad Edgelords, Riot is not failing or anything. I hope my comments stick with you. Bex has poisoned your life. I watched you decline to half the person you were. You used to love life. Nowadays, you hate it. You actively seek out enemies to fight, enemies they have constructed for you out of their own delusions and victim complex. It fucking sucks to see. If you want to hate Gamergate, be my guest, have your opinion even. A lot of Gamergaters seem to be great people to me, but you're not happy hating them, and my guess is you love games and gaming in general. Why the fuck are you spending all your time reading comment wars your fiance gets sucked into, instead of doing what you love, designing champs and playing video? And of course, it just so happens that this person who the Kotaku in Action moderators verified did indeed know them and would have known them. Lo and behold, his constant need to battle these fake illusory enemies has cost him his job. I imagine he's even more miserable now. I mean, this is what happens. You get sucked into it, and it's just like a negative spiral. So you'll see that there's nothing there attacking him or his partner, and that's it. That's all I've ever written about them. So just saying, all right, guys, just saying, when you read about like how Breitbart gives voice to, I'm supposedly one of those abusers, and that's the abusive attack that I wrote. I mean, it just seems to me like reporting, but okay, whatever, not a problem. So anyway, 1 month after Tynan Sylvester has decided to do an interview with Breitbart, and I'm sure you remember this because I did a video about this on my YouTube channel. You can go check it out if you want for historical reference. How Rimworld's code defines strict gender roles. Remember what I told you about the rule. Whenever they want to write something they know is controversial, they know is edgy, and they want to mine hate clicks and get the biggest return of investment they can, because they probably pay this contributor, $250, maybe $500 max for this article, right? I know some contributors get paid as little as like $50 to $100 per article they write. Generally, for longer features, that goes up. You get a contributor in, and you pay them low, and then you mine the hate clicks, and it maximizes it, while also giving you plausible deniability. Oh, it's not the publication stance. You're not even a real journalism. It's all good, right? So she wrote this article here, Claudia Lowe, how Rimworld code defines strict gender roles. And basically, she talks about playing it, and she talks about how like two of the pawns she's playing within the game have a romance. And then basically what she then starts talking about is that, you know, male and female relationships are more likely in the game. And here's some code that she supposedly uncovered. And what it does is it basically means that like females, like female characters in the game will not initiate romance. And they're also like I think I can't remember which way around it was, and I don't want to have to read this garbage again. Yeah, there it is. There are no straight women in Rimworld, as in there are no women only attracted to men. Instead, every single non-gay woman in the game has some chance of being attracted to another woman. As for men, it works differently. So basically what it said is that, you know, women are more likely to get into same-sex relationships in the game. And here's the code that proves it. And she says, well, that's just unbelievably sexist. Now, what's interesting is Tynan Sylvester tweeted out after this article saying, oh, yeah, that's a mistake in the code, and we've corrected it now in the most recent patch. But what's also interesting is science does back this up. There were a couple of studies that came out around about this time. I don't know if they're right or how valid they are. I haven't looked at it. But I'm just saying there were like 2 studies that people linked to off the back of this drama basically saying that's actually not entirely inaccurate. Now, I don't know enough about it, nor really care. Again, I find all this like sexuality talk to be really fucking dull and tedious. So whatever. But look, she presented all of the code and she talks about it. And then look, I will give you a summary. Men are about 8 times as likely as women to try and start a romance. Pawns with disabilities will always be found less attractive. Beautiful pawns, so, you know, they're against disabled people apparently. Beautiful pawns are always considered vastly more attractive. Ugly pawns vastly less. Physical beauty is the only trait that governs attractiveness aside from sexual orientation. Straight men always find men unattractive. Gay men always find women unattractive. There are no bisexual men. Women may find women attractive. Gay women always find men unattractive. There are only bisexual or gay women. And then blah, blah, blah. So this article came out and it was like, well, maybe this is worth your time to write about. I don't really see it. But it was written clearly as a hit piece. And this was written before Rock, Paper, Shotgun had even reviewed the game. Right? So they clearly had their priorities set. Then this was the nail in the coffin for my relationship with Rock, Paper, Shotgun. I don't read it anymore. I just had no time for it. I used to read it pretty religiously, even though there was dodgy articles and woke garbage coming across its pages all the time. This for me was when I said never again. Just nah, not doing it anymore. So Tynan Sylvester replied to this. He did a very thorough reply to what was a very clear hit piece. And you can see here his reply. He did it on Reddit, right? Which, here we go. And it's a pretty long reply. There's some key bits here to pay attention to. Actually, just before we read this, I'll just take you back to the article because there's an important piece at the end. Right.
You're not even a real journalism.
Very important that you guys remember this fact. So you can see there's an editor's note down here. And it said the developer was contacted for an interview as part of this article, but declined to take part unless we ceded editorial control over the publishing of that interview. Now, that sounds very bad because obviously as a publication, you should never give a party you're interviewing or somebody you're writing about editorial control. That should be with you. Absolutely agree with that. But what they meant by editorial control was, I think Tynan Sylvester just said, can I see what context my quotes are being used in? And can you please not edit my quotes? Please use them in their entirety. And Rock, Paper, Shotgun said they weren't willing to do that. So, okay. And then it said, the developer has left a response below in the comments and here on Reddit. We stand by the accuracy of the article entirely. There's a slight problem with that right out of the gates, that while it's fresh in your memory, I will take you, I will show it to you. So this problem is that it's not accurate in any way, shape, or form. In fact, let me just, because I got to scroll down to get this bit. Where was it? Here it is. So she presented code and said to people, this is what the code in the game says, right? Now, what Tiny Sylvester says, also note, the original article presented this as a code comment, which was interpreted by some readers as having come directly from my code. Decompiled code does not include comments. The blogger wrote that comment, and all the others, herself. So to put this in layman's terms, in case you're confused, all of that code she represented, she made that up. It's not the game's code at all. It's how she interpreted the code in the game and wrote it out. And then she falsely passed it off as actual code in the game. She then said, he then goes on, she also restructured the code and added names of variables and such. Decompiled code does not include local variable names. It's better regarded as her pseudocode interpretation of my code and not anything I actually wrote. So, Rock, Paper, Shotgun are saying we totally stand by the accuracy of the article, but they've let the writer invent code and present it as if the game was coded this way, which is in no way true. But anyway, he responds to a bunch of stuff here where he says, Rimworld doesn't even define gender. In Rimworld, males and females are almost entirely identically, physically and behaviorally. They fight the same, they cook, build, craft, and clean the same. They have the same kind of emotional breakdowns in the same situations, and the same things affect their moods in the same way. They spawn at the same roles of trader, pirate, drifter, ally, and enemy, with the same mixes of skills. The only asymmetry is in the probability of attempting romantic interactions, but even then, there are no strict gender roles. Women propose to men and hit on them, and so on. Women do all the same behaviors as men. The only difference is that the game applies some probability factors to romance attempts based on the character doing the behavior. That's it. Every character can still do every behavior except one case, which is being fixed for the next version, so it's simply wrong to say there are strict gender roles in the game. Anyway, you can read the whole thing. I did a video on it. You can go check that out. But then it came up again, this war against fucking Rimworld, and it came up because of that PC Gamer review that I brought up right at the start. PC Gamer did a fucking review of it and gave it 74, which, listen, 74 should be a decent review score in this day and age. But compared to some of the games that have got around 70, between 70 and 80, which is, you know, obviously a 7 out of 10, right? It's basically insane. Like that this game has been deemed to not be as good as some others. I mean, you know, they give a lot of like Ubisoft generic stuff like 80, you know, like Far Cry 5, you know, I think that scored like 80 something, and it's like, this is a very special and unique game and should get points and plaudits for that. Now, the writer here basically gave it a bad score because they didn't like heteronormative relationships being presented as the main, and they didn't like the fact that it defined gender. So let's just read you that passage here, which I think is, yeah, okay. Hang on, is it in that bit? No, it's three paragraphs down. Okay. Yeah, so it should be here. There's a lot of promise in the idea these characters bring to the table. In my first game, I had a colonist who, chronologically, was 114 years old, but thanks to the weird complications of space travel, was really only 24. The son she left behind was now approaching his 50s. His daughter, her granddaughter, was now 31. Rimworld pitches itself as a story generator, and these weird relationships are exactly the thing that fire up the imagination. But there are some peculiar aspects to this approach to character generation, though. Each character gets 3 traits, things like obsessive, lazy, or misogynist. One of the modifiers is gay, but straight isn't. That's just the default, which is painfully heteronormative and outdated for a game about the far-flung future. Like, I don't know what to say about that. Like, I don't know what to say about that from, like, a biological viewpoint. You know, it's like, let's even say there was like a setting for straight, and let's say you had, like, your character was assigned neither. Are you non-sexual, asexual, bisexual? It's just a ridiculous nitpick. The fact is that there's gay representation in the game for both men and women, and they'll act upon it. And in fact, characters that don't have the gay trait will still sometimes find themselves in amorous relationships with members of the same sex based on external factors to the game, even if the game doesn't label them straight. So it's a very silly thing, and you can see she hasn't played enough of this to know this. Obviously, I do. You know, I've had guys fall in love with each other when one of them is, again, he doesn't have the gay trait, but he's with a dude. So, you know, but again, I don't stay awake at night fucking thinking about it. What does it all mean? You know, it's just, it ain't that deep, frankly. So anyway, other aspects of queerness are included, but in equally reductive ways. Like a character's backstory discussing that they're transgender, proof of which being they're dressing up in their mother's clothes as a child. All of which leaves a bit of a bad taste in the mouth. It feels odd to have some traits sat alongside each other. Misogyny next to ugly, hardworking next to psychopath. These things are not alike, but are placed in the character generator with equal importance. So immediately as well, you can see she's trying to label the game transphobic. Now, this to me, by the way, is a very, you know, this is what I mean about when you can't trust critics these days, because it's like she has scanned this game at a very surface level, clearly, and what she's done is she's managed to tunnel in on some reason to say Tynan Sylvester is a bad human being and the game is problematic in some way. And this all dates back to his Breitbart interview, which had he not done an interview with Breitbart the same way that Tim saw it, if he hadn't have fucking said or tweeted out that he had no problem with Gamergate, he would be having no problems right now, okay? There is a clique, a cartel that just goes after people and will try and reduce your capacity for success using the tools at their disposal if they consider you to not be politically aligned. Which, by the way, Tynan Sylvester has made no protestations about his thoughts on sexuality, gender fluidity, transgenderism. He's never talked explicitly about any of these things, and he's made a game that represents all of these things, which to me is a cause for celebration and applause, not a cause to continually shit on this guy because he did an interview with a publication you don't like. So anyway, well, it doesn't end there, the madness. Like, Tynan Sylvester felt compelled to respond to this because, well, you would do. The idea that there is a transphobic component to the game or the stories are like reductive is pretty insulting, and it's something that should be backed with absolute evidence. So Tynan Sylvester tweets out, he says, I usually wouldn't comment on reviews, but this part of PC Gamer's review needs addressing. All trans character descriptions were written by players through our backstory in the game program. I don't think it's my place to censor how people describe their own experiences. Well, this is a fucking checkmate, ladies and gentlemen, because the thing that this non-trans person said was reductive, right, were all written by trans people. In fact, Tynan Sylvester and his team of writers didn't broach the subject of transgenderism. Everything about the trans experience was written by trans people. Oof! That is fucking checkmate right there. Imagine how fucking dumb you are, right, to just immediately jump out. This was readily available information, by the way. This wasn't anything, again, with things like research. You could have definitely found this out. And she didn't, you know? She wasn't interested. She dived straight in because she wanted to fucking write the narrative. And here we go. So he continues. He says, this part of the review implies that I, as the developer, was supposed to be writing trans backstories in a more correct way. But what words can possibly be more correct than the actual words of a trans person? We were inclusive to the varied self-perspectives of our diverse players, and it's used as a point against the game. The review gives no indication of where the quoted words came from, misleading readers into thinking that it was all written by some misguided game writer. I'm asking PC Gamer to issue a correction to clarify these words they're calling reductive and bad taste were written by players describing their own trans self-perspectives, not by a game writer. And then he addresses the writer, Sam Greer, and Evan Larty, the global editor-in-chief. And he says, PC Games added a clarifying note. We'll come to that clarifying note in a second. Considering how personally damaging false implications like this are, I wish they were never published. But I'm appreciative they addressed it relatively quickly. So look, this is a reply. I'm a trans woman. The first time I played Rimworld, I didn't know people had written their own stories into the game until I stumbled into one of the trans characters, and it became immediately obvious that it was written by a trans person of their own experience. While the article implicates you, a cis person, this section is part of a larger pattern of not accepting the messy realities and stories written and expressed by trans people. Our lives get weird and messy, and our narratives often don't fit into the reductive wants of others. This all sucks because it discourages you and others from including trans narratives written by trans people in your art, and of course draws in the anti-SJW crowd who are no more supportive of trans people in our stories unless they serve a political goal. Sigh, it's almost like an incidental system exists to continuously silence trans people, keeping us at a distance and a subject of discussion but never a participant. And then look at this. This is your bad guy. This is your bad, evil games developer. Hoping someday we'll have more freedom to represent individuals as messy, flawed individuals and not as idealized puppet symbols for a belief system. But to make that happen, we'll need to change norms to be more understanding of different individual perspectives. So, again, how is Tynan Sylvester the bad guy here, right? I mean, am I tripping? It's just ridiculous, isn't it? That you've even got trans people replying to this saying, yeah, this is true of my experience, and thank you for putting it in the game. So PC Gamer's clarifying note. To me, again, just speaking as a former editor and long-standing journalist, what I would do is I would say a previous version of this story intimated that Tynan Sylvester or Rimworld's writing team had written the trans characters' story points in the game. This is false, and we apologize for misrepresenting that as being true. That's what I would insist was added to the article, because that is objectively true. PC Gamer, though, they can't do it. They just can't do it. They can't admit they were wrong. They can't admit that once again they've had a lax of journalistic standards, and here they are. Here's their clarifying note they added. Editor's note. Some of Rimworld's backstories were created by Kickstarter backers. Wah, 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 wah. Are you fucking serious? Are you fucking serious? Is that all you're going to say? That doesn't even speak to the fact that any of those people were trans. It's ridiculous. You know? There's nothing else. There's nothing else. And of course, wah wah, they've locked the comments. Comments for this thread are closed because people might correct us and tell us that we were ethically wrong again. That editor's note does not address the issue in any way, shape, or form, and you should be fucking ashamed that you think it does. You're not fit to do your job. Again. How many times are we going to say this about games journalists? Unbelievable. So, you would think at this point, right, there used to be a show called The Big Breakfast in the UK, right? And they used to run like little sort of game shows within the show. Let me see if I can just find it, right? Do they have the... Because this is going way back in time. This is like 1993, kids. I used to get up when I had to go to school. Is this it? Is this it? No, that's not it. That's not it. Is it this? Will this have it? Yeah, it does. It does. This is perfect. Right. So when we talk about fucking just this article and what a fucking tremendous self-own it is. Like, just to summarize it, okay? Journalist wants to be woke and wants to get woke points, comes in and goes, This game's a bit reductive of trans people, isn't it? Look at these crazy stories. I started dressing up in my mother's clothes and realized I was trans. As if that's ever happened to anybody. And then the trans person comes, the guy who makes the game comes and goes, that was written by a trans person. And the trans person who wrote it goes, yeah, but that is how I started. And that was my journey towards transitioning. And then the journalist just goes, let's not have comments on this article, yeah? And then does a little tweet like, oh, my mentions. Oh, my mentions. Right? So anyway, back to this game show that they used to have on a show called The Big Breakfast. They used to do this game called Egg on Your Face, right? And the theme for it is just describes games journalists now. Just listen to this. Right, so there you go. That's games journalism. Fucking non-stop egg on your face, right? Egg on your fucking face, mate. Right? Now, at this point, what you should do is, it's such an unbelievable self-own, you should just zip it. Just zip it. Austin Powers, Dr. Evil, just zip it. Zip it. Zip it. If a problem comes along, you must zip it. Don't talk about this again. You've embarrassed yourself again. You've embarrassed your profession again. You've embarrassed your publication again. You've embarrassed yourself again. Right? Just stop, okay? Go away, take a break, shut the fuck up. But no, they can't, right? So, off the back of this, the usual people start sticking their fucking heads out, right? They just gotta do it, don't they? They gotta rally round. It's not a cartel, it's not a cult, it's not a clique. Check this shit out. This is a, Waypoint. Waypoint. The same publication that refused to review Kingdom Come and give it coverage because they said it was alt-right because it accurately represented the ethnic group in that part of the world in its historically accurate role-playing game, right? You know, they refused to cover it. Far be it from me to think that maybe fucking Waypoint have a problem, right? But whatever. But anyway, so a writer from Waypoint called Dia Lacina. I mean, again, half of these names sound made up. You know, maybe they're right. There's so many people using like what looked at me like fucking pseudonyms, right? But anyway, this is what she says. Using Kickstarter's backers' identities as a shield is fucking low. He's not using it as a shield, you fucking moron. He's stating the facts, which is meant to be your job. Pulling the I don't feel right censoring their experiences is disgustingly cheap and lazy, and it means you are a fucking terrible project leader. So now, what Rimworld was supposed to do, what Tynan Sylvester was supposed to do, was to take all of the stories written specifically so trans people could be included in the game, take all of the stories written by trans people and go, that's a fucking stupid story, that, mate. Sorry, like, I can't use that. No, but it's my experience. It's what happened to me. Yeah, it's bollocks, though, innit? Can't put that in a game. That's what he has to do. That's what he has to do now, according to games journalists. All right? I'll read you this full thing. Fuck, my cold's coming back. I'm struggling. I might have to gargle with some whiskey, try and kick the ever-living fuck out of this. This cold hat is like Mum-Ra, the ever-living dude, just at the back of my throat, like, yeah, Mum-Ra, yeah. Right, anyway. Guess what? You're the one responsible for calling the shots. And if you can't handle taking an editorial pass or you don't know how to take an editorial pass, then you find someone who can and will, or you refund that Kickstarter's cash. This is what being in charge means. So again, what Times of Us was supposed to do was go, sorry, your experiences that we've specifically solicited so we can represent your group in our game don't match up with my expectations and sound a bit silly, so we're not putting them in the game. Here's your money back. Can you imagine the article that would be written if a trans person had their story rejected by a games developer and given their money back? They go to fucking whatever a fucking name is, and they say, yo, I tried to back Rimworld, and the guy said he didn't want my story because he didn't think it sounded true. This bitch would have the fastest fucking fingers in the fucking West writing this up and condemning that guy. What a fucking insane fucking full Nelson to put somebody in. I'm sorry, Tyne and Sylvester, if you feel slighted by a totally solid review, by a totally solid reviewer, but this is your mistake. You were the one who personally damaged your project by not thinking how it would be received, by not taking lead on your project content. Grow up. Actually, she could have also just not marked the game down for a very minor thing that she didn't like in the game and judge the game on its merits, because remember, it's game criticism, not like, oh, well, we must look at the meta-narrative and what does it say in Trump's America. Whatever happened to just, like, look, you should, 10% of critical output should be talking about, like, things like politics and contemporary viewpoints and reviewing like old work and sort of putting it in a modern context or looking at subtext and things like this. About 10%. The 90% should be driven towards consumers. It should be a review. It should be a review. This is the game. This is how it plays. This is what happens in the game. This is how it performs on certain types of PCs. Indeed, one of the grounds you could have just marked Rimworld down if you wanted to do it spitefully is when you get bigger colonies, it does fucking chug. I got a beast machine and I get lag. Right? So, just saying, you could have talked about that. You never would. You never would. None of you even know fucking... You can't even put a graphics card in your fucking PCs. Which, again, is fine. I don't mind you writing about it, but there should be two separate things. There should be Rimworld, the review, and Rimworld, does it reinforce heteronormative, stereotypes or whatever, like, and make that like a little opinion piece and make that part of your 10% of the output. Both those articles can happily coexist. What you can't do is fold one into the other and then give the game a bad review because you don't like its representation. It's such a tiny thing in the grand scheme of the game. This huge game with huge scope that's still being updated. And Jesus fucking Christ, you are supposed to be paying people to write these stories. Uh-oh, here comes the gotcha. You pay them. You don't extract money from marginalized people to write their stories for you. Learn how the fucking game works or get a new career. Right, again, while we're talking about how the game works, right, you, a blogger, creates nothing of worth or lasting value. Him, a guy, made a fucking game, one of the best games on Steam. Who's created something of lasting value? Oh, it's him, isn't it, right? So here's how the game works. No one knows who the fuck you are, and no one will care who the fuck you are 5 years from now. This is as good as it gets for you. For him, I can't wait to see what the next game's going to be, or what the next update of Rimworld's going to be. And 10 years from now, when we're talking about video games, we'll probably say, yeah, remember that seminal work from Ludeon Studios, Rimworld? It was groundbreaking. Blah, 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 blah. No one's going to talk about Dear fucking Lucina, which sounds like an agony aunt column instead of a fucking name. And yeah, what a fucking strange thing to say. It was specific. If you wanted to pay to have background in the game, you could. If you wanted, they did something similar in Prison Architect. A lot of the criminals in the game, their backstories were by people who backed the game through Kickstarter. So Is that wrong? Is that exploitative? Oh, no, because it's marginalized people. So even though they knew what they were getting into and they knew what it was for and they did it, and Tiny Sylvester listened to them whole cloth and put it in the game and made sure trans representation was authentic, you're saying it's bad because Tiny Sylvester should have paid them. All right, okay, cool. That's also a fucking unbelievable perspective, but good for you, I guess. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, she just repeats herself. And you're like, the more of these tweets you read, like, you do start to fucking... Like, I never had a vascular head. And now I find I got this vein near my temple, and I'm sure it's basically the life vein. And one day it's going to pop, and I'm just going to turn off. And whoop, be like, oh, yeah, well... Richard just died suspiciously at his desk one day. Oh, what happened? What was he doing? Well, he just reading some tweets. Really weird. No cause. You know, that's it. It's the fucking, yeah, I die. Check the fuck out. It's too much in it. All right. Well, that's just one games journalist, Richard. That's just one games journalist. You always do this. You always take one person and say it represents all people. You're so dishonest. You're not even a real journalism. Right? Well, okay. Is an ex-vice writer. Isn't that a fucking accolade, by the way? What's that? Mad low follower accounts piling on a journalist for raising a fault with a game, in their opinion, in a review, which is an opinion, piling on after a precious dev went and called it out, as otherwise they would never have known. Great, grand, 2019, fucking hell. Because in no way do devs need to actually stand up to criticism in a productive way. Hands up, we could have communicated things better. Be human, be civil. Nah, whistle the pack and turn your back. Pathetic. Isn't this... like, doing the same for your followers? I don't know. Weird how it works, isn't it? How the rules are never equally applied. Someone said the reviewer hates straight men. Check her Twitter. This bleeds into her online content to the extent that she frothed at the mouth and found transphobia where there was none, homophobia where there was none, and trashed the score for that. This is why gamers don't trust her. Sam's a peer, I admire greatly so, with the utmost respect, I should say. Nope. No attempt at actual debate and discussion? Shame. So which bit do you disagree with? The reviewer hates straight men. See ya. All right? And then this guy included some tweets from the reviewer, which I guess we can look at those, right? If you want. Just for context, because, you know, I don't want to dig out the reviewer. I mean, put it this way, if you're ever angry at a reviewer for giving their opinion in a review, that's full-blown retarded. But let me just show you. This is really benign, honestly.
You're not even a real journalist.
This isn't even that big a deal. She just said avoid men altogether. So she obviously, I'm guessing, doesn't like men, isn't heterosexual, you know, whatever. No big deal there. I don't really give two fucks about that, frankly. And then there was what was the other one that the dude linked to? I mean, you know, that could be viewed as like hyperbolic, right? So that's fine. And then she just says here that like nothing will deter men from trying to seduce women, not even a suit made of nails. Yeah, it's not that bad. I'm just guessing she just doesn't like, you know, she doesn't want to date guys, and, you know, she said a few silly things on the internet. I'm all right with that. I don't give a fuck. I don't think that's any reason to fucking pile on particularly, or even jump to the conclusion she hates straight men. But that being said, clearly her review was informed by things that it just shouldn't be informed by. So next up, another journalist. Let me find and make sure I got this right, because they're all archived. Also, of course, remember, Kotaku in Action, named as a hate subreddit recently by Vice, and this guy says, oh, Kotaku in Action and the crew of odious arse pieces who sail with it. It's just a subreddit that talks about journalism and censorship and that. Occasionally it does have this weird overlap with the incel community that I've noticed. Can't do much about that. You just have to hope the incels grow out of it, right? Anyway, then let me just have a look. Then there was a response, you know, and again, like, just I'd just say nothing. It's just embarrassing, frankly, that you've been wrecked this hard. And then this upset me because it's another game. Sunless. Have you ever played Sunless Sea and Fallen London? Well, thank you, Rekovic, on Steam. As if he's doing my plug for me.
Happy birthday, Rich. Did you know that you can go to rivalry.gg/RLS to get $350 in VIP bonuses? Please bet responsibly.
I think I might do that. And bet responsibly as well, of course. You might want to check that out. So anyway, you can see here, like, this is from Sunless Skies. This is the communications director from the development team of Sunless Skies, which is the sequel to Sunless Sea that was coming out, and I was thinking about getting it, and now I can't. And it's like what happened with Reigns. You remember Reigns, the game? It was like Tinder, but you were a king, and you had to swipe left or swipe right to make decisions, and then it would take you down various storylines and stuff. Well, they got Lee Alexander to write on it, and it's like, well, uninstall that, can't buy that game, you know, any follow-ups for that game ever again, even though they've done a Game of Thrones edition that I might want to look at. I can't do it. I've got to stay true to my fucking principles, you know? But anyway, an interesting note in Sam Greer's piece on Rimworld, there's a blog to be written about maintaining a point of view while offering sufficiently enticing in-game power to Kickstarter backers. We do it very delicately, as anyone interested in reading this. And basically what she's saying is, don't worry, y'all. I've got your back, y'all. I will basically intimate that Tyne Sylvester did something wrong by letting trans people put their stories in the game. And look, I can't possibly think what her political perspective might be on this, or which side of the discussion she's going to fall down on. I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to guess that she probably is going to say Tynan Sylvester man bad for some reason. I just can't quite put my fucking finger on it. But anyway, let me just get back to the Sam Greer tweet. So instead of Sam Greer saying, oh, actually, you know, it was a little bit silly, I could have researched it, I did infer something inappropriate and incorrect about Tynan Sylvester, a little bit embarrassed by it, frankly. Here's what she does. This is the only time she's even responded to it. She goes, if your blog can elaborate on, so I'm just going to tell you what to write to back me up, basically. If it can elaborate on how including player content doesn't absolve you of responsibility for what is in your game and how it's presented, then I absolutely want to read it, tongue out face. I'd wait until the Gable goofers have settled down, though. That's what they do, you see. These people, they get worried that there's people out there searching for Gamergate, even though anyone who ever used the hashtag Gamergate has moved on from Gamergate and only talks about Gamergate through the lens of why don't you stop talking about Gamergate, but they never use the word Gamergate in case you Twitter search it, which no one does, so they call them like goober grapers and Gable goofers. It's like, it's so pathetic. You know, first of all, there are no gamer gators. It was never an organization. It was never a gang, never a clique, never a cult. It was a hashtag. They don't exist. It's in your mind. Uh-oh. A donation's coming through with a Joey bit. Ah, thank you very much, Dust. $20. Thank you.
Happy birthday. Have a very nice 6-pack, a decent 4-pack, a shit bottle of whiskey, or half of a decent bottle of whiskey.
Thank you, Dust. I will do that as soon as drinking any of those things will not literally kill me. I'm definitely involved. And then look, oh yeah, we totally can do that thing. I'll totally write a blog to your specifications to help you out. Now, fair enough, she's not a journalist. I should say she just works as a communications director at a game development team. But what is that? What is that? Like, oh, yeah, I'll write the thing you want. presented as a completely unfiltered my opinion, you know, that's ridiculous. Now, if you just go as well, let's have a look at the extent of the abuse she got. Here it is. I think that's like trying to be cool and say my review of Rimworld is now online for those of ye who like words and things. Oof. That's right. Let's have a look. Should we look at the abuse, shall we? There are 60 replies. Okay. Which, you know, how bad can it be? Your insight is always sublime. I love reading your work. Beautifully written review. I would fight a bear to be able to write like this. Brave of you to... Oh, here we go. Somebody said there, brave of you to only engage with the positive comments and not acknowledge that you made huge errors in your understanding of basic game mechanics. Have some integrity. Not that bad, right? Not that bad. Please keep your own personal political views out of game reviews, especially ones that most people aren't likely to share. They only clutter the discussion. And please disclose how the game's heteronormative tendencies affected your score. This wasn't an informative review. Also, you wrote, going through an entire field of potato plants to order each of them to be harvested is the kind of busy work that feels needless. This demonstrates you haven't properly played the game. There is a UI tool that lets you click drag to mass harvest crops. And then the guy from Vice, wow, you must be fun at parties with your 0 follow. I don't invite my Twitter followers to parties, mate, because I'm not living in some mad fucking clique where the only people I associate with are people I met through my video games journalism career. Like, what a... And again, like, they just can't stop owning themselves, these fucking losers. They just literally can't stop fucking owning themselves. Like, you're fun at parties with your 0 followers. I party with my 11.7k followers all the time. Noob. Alright. Haha. Rim. Good read. Okay. Y'all, this is why we got to hang out. So it's just somebody probably from another game development company or another games journalist. Wow, we must get together sometime and hang out. Wouldn't it be a journalist's job to go and find out where the character backstories came from? Yeah, yes. To which this guy from Kotaku, PC Games In. Oh, he was another guy who went crazy about it, by the way. I should probably bring up his tweets. Said, when reviewing something, you are a critic. It's not the critic's role to look outside of a piece to find the creator's intent, source, or inspiration. They're reviewing what is in front of them, informed from their own personal position and experiences. True. Don't even necessarily disagree with that assessment. But she started talking about the external because she started talking about the stories and how they're outdated in the modern world. She started attaching things to this external broader context. She didn't just look at the piece of art as was, did she? She started talking about, oh, it's a bit outdated, isn't it? Oh, we've come on so far, and you know that. She's the one that brought external context to the discussion. Well, at that point, if you're gonna make judgments on that premise, you must have all the information readily available. Usually helps, which again, this guy says, usually helps to check whether a claim you're making is valid or not. I know that's pretty much hard for Twitter journalists to accomplish. For your information, a Reddit thread is kind of hating on you right now. Could you link me to it, please? Says Queen Jobber. And then they link to a Kotaku in Action thread, which again, the hate is very marginal. And then, there's just nothing here. Like, there's just nothing. There's no abuse. Like, this is all very benign. This isn't like hate. It's just, I found your review arbitrary, biased, and shallow. Oh no! People critiquing your writing while you yourself are a critic. Imagine being a critic for a living and then saying, well, when people criticize me, it's hate. people with like no platform. Imagine it. Imagine being that person. So anyway, I'll link you to this fucking mental case as well. Like another like seriously disturbed games journalist who thinks he also dropped the Goober Graper. This might be tough because these people fucking tweet non-stop. It's all they've got. Actually, his picture, by the way. Right? Famed bastard. Oh, you're so edgy. And oh, take me. Take me always, Agnew. Take me. Right? It's just all a bunch of...
Happy birthday.
Thanks, bro.
They say that all men are created equal, but
That's
you
true.
look at Richard and you look other journalists and you can see that that statement is not true. You see, normally when you go one-on-one with another person you have a 50-50 chance of winning.
That's true. I was waiting for the rest of the Steiner quote there to come in, but I appreciate it. So...
You're not even a real journalism. That's right.
So where is it? Oh, here we go. This is where he started it. So,
that's right.
where was it? Yeah, this was it. So he just said, the scum are out in force tonight. The block list grows. Like, the block list, unfortunately, is probably why you only have 631 followers and no one knows who the fuck you are, despite having so many fucking bylines at different publications, you idiot. Right? Getting blocked upsets them so much they spend the next day going through your work and tweeting about you. Thanks very much. Right? And this is a guy who actually said, I bet you're fun at parties, saying, I'm having a blast just blocking and drinking. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine it? Can you imagine that lack of self-awareness in your brain? Bet you're fun at parties, mate. Now I'm off to my games journalist dungeon to drink alone and block people on Twitter. Fucking hell, mate. Do you want the number for the fucking Samaritans? Because I guarantee you're going to need it at some point. But anyway, and there was some other comments where he was like saying, "Oh, you know, I believe women and I stand with her." You know, over this Sam Greer getting criticized for writing a fucking stupid review. It's just ridiculous. It's like, guys, just fucking, you know, just own your shit. Like, you just fucked up. This is why people are tired of games journalists, because you never own your shit. When you fuck up, you never come out and say, we fucked up. You always, like, double down and say, well, you know, she's entitled to make that mistake. These goober grapers. Like, come on. When is it gonna fucking stop with you guys? Like, because all your publications are literally going to shit. You're not going to have jobs soon. At least use this as some sort of learning exercise. It can be salvaged. It doesn't have to be this way. You are literally killing an entire industry. And the fucked up thing is, the only people who want to work in it are fucking plankton-eating fucking life forms like yourself. Everyone else has moved on. Like, if you like games, you just have YouTubers, Twitch streamers. Now we even review our own games. And we organize review bombs of games, which I think is stupid, if the developers do things we don't like. There's just no need for games journalists. But if you could write something insightful, interesting, amusing, compelling, if you could just do that, you could still all have jobs, but you can't. You don't have it in you. It's just a platform to fucking bang on these people fucking endlessly that you've imagined they're not even real. It's just insane. And it's insane to me that you do this to yourselves. And then when the sad tweet comes out, looking for work, if anyone needs a freelance writer, there's going to be nowhere left. The freelance games journalism is not going to be a fucking job. It's not going to be possible. You're going to have fucked it up. Because all you've done endlessly for now, well, 4.5 years, is just attack the only people that could have fucking made your career work out. And not even real people in that audience. The gumble grippers. The grifter grappers. It's like, fucking get me out, man. You people are idiots. It's just whatever. I don't need it. That is the war on Rimworld, and it's going to continue. Why are these publications not reviewing this amazing game?